Yo, what's good everyone? Today I'm going to be breaking down some of my favorite tournament or GPP plays for this Week 8 NFL DraftKings main slate. Let's dive right into it. And like we always do here in this video, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of my cheat sheet, breaking down a couple of game stacks that I like targeting here this week, as well as some of my favorite individual plays and stacks. But before we dive into the game stacks, everyone, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. It's completely free to do, and every like, comment, and sub that you guys leave me truly does help me out. With that being said, let's dive into a couple of game stacks that I like targeting this week, and I do want to address this here. A common question I've been seeing on this channel is, do we really need to do a full game stack in tournament? The answer is no, you don't have to do a full game stack. That's just part of the video that I've always done here for this tournament, basically saying, what are a couple of games here that could really shoot out some high scoring potential and how I would stack those up. But just an example here, I like this game between the Baltimore Ravens and Chicago. I could do something like Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, run it back with Derrick Henry, and I'd be content with that. But again, I think there's some shootout potential in this game here. So I like doing a little double stack with Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, and Colston Loveland, assuming that Cole Kmet is not going to play at the tight end position for the Bears this week. It sounds like he's unlikely to play. Loveland here would then basically be a full-time player in that offense, and he's very affordable there at $3,000. And then running it back with Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers. Now, I talked about this in my cash plays video. Make sure you go tune into that if you haven't watched it yet. But Derrick Henry is way too cheap here at $6,000, considering a good matchup at home against the Chicago Bears. And with Lamar Jackson expected back here this week, kind of the same thing here with Zay. He's a little too cheap at $5,400, and he's played well with Lamar under center so far this year. So I like the Bears side. I think we could stack up either side, to be honest. You could do Lamar, Zay Flowers, run it back with DeAndre Swift, but considering that secondary has not been very good for Baltimore this year, I like the passing attack here for Chicago, and then running it back with a couple of those Baltimore players. And then a little simpler game stack that I like targeting here this weekend is this game between Atlanta and Miami, and I like stacking up the Atlanta side at home, who are in a great spot against this Miami defense, going with Michael Penix here, who's very affordable at $4,900, his number one pass catcher in Drake London, and a very affordable Kyle Pitts at $3,900. If you wanted to go with Darnell Mooney here in the mid 4K range instead of Pitts, I have no problem with that. I just prefer going with Pitts myself, and then running it back there with Devon Achane. Now, I did see here, sounds like Jalen Waddle is going to play this week. If you wanted to go with Waddle instead of Achane, save some money there, I have no problem with that. But considering the tournament appeal and the ceiling score that Achane offers, I prefer going this route here. So it is very affordable, and I think it's got some sneaky shootout potential as well. Now, folks, before we dive into some of these individual plays and stacks here, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, again, I would greatly appreciate that. It's completely free to do, and every like, comment, and sub that you guys leave me truly does help me out. Alright, now diving into some of these individual plays and stacks here, we're going to kick it off at the quarterback position, and honestly, the third game stack I would have highlighted would have been that game between the Broncos and Cowboys, and this Cowboys offense is going way too overlooked here in Week 8. Yes, I understand you're going into Denver, high altitude, never ideal, against a pretty damn good defense, but that defense got ate up last week against the Giants, and Dak Prescott in this offense have been very good as of late, really all year long, honestly. So at $6,500 here, he's coming in around 3-4% ownership this week, which is way too low. Again, I know that secondary and the cornerbacks are great for the Denver Broncos, but the Dallas Cowboys do a very good job of mixing in CeeDee Lamb in the slot. He's going to avoid Patrick Surtain at times. George Pickens is one of the best one-on-one wide receivers in the NFL. He is going to win that matchup, whether it be against Moss or Surtain at times. So, again, I just think that considering how well this Cowboys offense has played this year, they should not be this low owned heading into Week 8. Next, we got the running backs here, and I talked about this in my cash plays video as well. Really, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Christian McCaffrey are all good plays here this week. But of those three, CMC right now, as I record this on Friday, is projected to have the lowest ownership of those three. Again, he's not going to be super low owned by any means, but when he's the lowest owned of those tier 1 running backs, I think he makes for a really solid tournament play. Cam Skattebo did really well against this Philly defense just a couple of games games ago, scored 3 touchdowns in that game, and no, we're not going to be able to bank on that game in and game out, but he's kind of flying under the radar here heading into week 8 as well, and considering he just had a 30-point performance against this defense, I think he makes for a nice tournament play. On the other side of that game, you guys are probably sick of me talking about Saquon Barkley, but he's coming in around 10% ownership here this week. Yes, there's still that revenge narrative against his former team in the New York Giants, who rank as the second or third worst rushing defense in the NFL. I know the Eagles cannot get the running game going, but considering he's only at 10% ownership here this weekend in a really good matchup against that Giants defense, I think he's a solid tournament play again. We then got the wide receivers here. CeeDee Lamb, I just talked about this with Dak Prescott. Sure, he's going to see Pat Surtain at times. There's no doubt about that this week. Might see a little bit of Moss as well, but the reality is he plays from the slot quite a bit too, and he can win in those matchups. So $7,800 here. Jamar Chase is likely going to be super popular at $8,100, which makes CD kind of fly under the radar. I'll take advantage of that in tournaments. And then I got 2 wide receivers here in the mid 5K range, Michael Pittman and T. Higgins. Pittman in a really good spot against the Tennessee Titans. Now, Josh Downs is going to be back here this week, which might reduce a target or two going Pittman's way, but it should also reduce his ownership in a really good spot. I more so prefer T. Higgins here. Talked about it with CeeDee Lamb. Jamar Chase is going to be super popular this week, and for all the right reasons. Guy saw 23 targets last weekend, but T. Higgins saw 10 himself from Joe Flacco, and he's in a good spot at home against the New York Jets. So I like both those guys in the mid 5K range. And then Jalen Noel here at $3,500. This is assuming that Nico Collins and Christian Kirk are both going to be out for the Houston Texans this weekend. I know people are going to be talking about Xavier Hutchinson and Jaden Higgins as well, but for me, I like Jalen Noel here in the slot. He only might be on the field about 60% of the time, but he saw a lot of first read and second reads from CJ Stroud last week. So again, he was the guy for me at $3,500. And some nice price savings there as well, and a decent matchup against the 49ers. When it comes to the tight ends this week, and yes, I just snuck in George Kittle there as well at $4,500, the 3K range is going to be very popular for tight ends, which kind of opens up this low to mid 4K range, right? George Kittle, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, 3 guys who offer some really nice upside on their teams, and just happen to be going overlooked here in week 8 due to the popularity of that 3K range. A lot of people want to spend up at the running back and wide receiver position this week, which is going to force you to spend down somewhere. More times than not, that's at the tight end and defense position. So these guys, they're not even super expensive. They're just going overlooked due to how popular that 3K range is going to be. And just like the tight ends this week, people are going to be looking to spend down for defenses, and I understand it. I've made a bunch of builds here already as kind of my mock lineups. I'm spending up at the running back position. I'm spending up for guys like Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, even guys like Drake London. So it doesn't allow me to spend up at the tight end or defensive position, especially in my cash lineup. But for tournaments, I want to try and find ways to get unique. And one of the ways we can do that here this week is probably by spending up at the defensive position. You got the Colts here at $3,800 taking on a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward. And that Titans offense has been bad all year long. Patriots taking on a rookie quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. They're getting better by the week. And then the Bengals here at $2,700 are likely going to be a bit popular. But if I'm looking to save some money here, they stick out to me in a good matchup against Tyrod Taylor and the New York Jets, who are also going to be missing their number 1 weapon, and Garrett Wilson. Alright everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's have ourselves a great weekend here, folks, and let's win some money on this Week 8 NFL main slate.